Exclusive contract with Feilu Novel Network Novel. Special operations. Start activating Little Brother template. Jiang Yi travels through the world of special warfare glory and becomes a novice alongside Yan Poyue and Xiao Yunjie. On the day of joining the army, Jiang Yi obtained the character template system, the opening young man template, and activated the Qilin bloodline. By increasing the progress of character templates, corresponding abilities can be obtained. From Zhang Qilin's physical fitness to the young man's skills, swordsmanship, and marksmanship, even the Yan Shuangying template, Feng Yuxiu template, Wang Chao template. As the template progress increases, these abilities are also acquired by Jiang Yi one by one. Yan Poyue said, "Jiang Yi, wait for me. Your progress speed is too fast." Xiao Yunjie. In just one sentence, Jiang Ge is the strongest. Guo Xiaoxiao said, "In this life, I have only served one person, and that is Jiang Yi. Ai Qianxue. Can you smile at me?" From then on, the military's iron triangle began to emerge and became famous all over the world. Feilu Novel Network reminds you that this novel and its characters are purely fictional. If there are any similarities, they are purely coincidental and should not be imitated. Chapter 1. The purpose of being strong, seeking flowers. Seeking comments. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 1. The purpose of being strong. Drink. Drink. As soon as the first ray of sunshine in the morning shone, waves of childish cheers had already sounded in a military district courtyard. A few children who appeared to be only elementary school years old stood in the middle of the yard, waving their small fists continuously. In front of them stood three young people who looked 18 or 19 years old. All three young people have standard-inch heads, and their skin has a healthy wheat color due to year-round sun training. Their handsome appearance and strong physique make them stand out particularly in this courtyard. Just then, one of the girls suddenly fell and sat on the ground. Exhausted, she shook her arm and looked at the young man standing in the middle with a broken face. "Jiang Yi, I can't practice anymore. Can I take a break for a while?" Looking at the girl, Jiang Yi frowned. "From the beginning of the training until now, it has only taken half an hour. When I first started training, I couldn't take a break without 2 hours a day. These children are too spoiled now." He silently stared at the girl again, then turned around and left. The girl looked at his back and pouted in grievance. Brother Jiang Yi is still so fierce. Another young man next to him, with a cheerful expression, quickly picked up the conversation. "So what, you guys go back and rest first. Everyone goes back to their own homes and looks for their mothers. They have breakfast and are ready for school." "Yes." A few children heard this and quickly got up from the ground and ran back home. The two young people who were still in place looked at each other and sighed, then turned around and walked towards the direction where Jiang Yi was. Not far from where they trained. The weather-beaten wooden dummy was pounded by Jiang Yi. Seeing Jiang Yi practicing on his own again, the cheerful young man took a step forward and smiled as he spoke. "Lao Jiang, why don't we go home for dinner first after this order? I'll practice for a while longer." With an expressionless answer, Jiang Yi punched again. The cheerful young man sighed and continued, "A few little brats, it's the age of playfulness. Don't be angry with them. You and Swallow are not normal people, you can't expect those children to be like you." "I'm not angry." Jiang Yi took a deep breath and stopped moving. He looked at the cheerful young man in front of him and said coldly, "I just feel like it's a waste of time." The two young people in front of him are his friends who grew up together since he traveled to this world. The one with a cheerful appearance is called Xiao Yunjie, while the other with a strong mindset is called Yan Poyue. Those who can live in the courtyards of military regions are military personnel or their relatives. He is no exception. His parents are both soldiers. But at his elementary school age, his parents sacrificed themselves for a task. Yan Poyue's father Yan Shuangying was his father's comrade in arms during the Cheetah assault team, and he was adopted since then. In order to inherit the legacy of his parents, he also began to receive military training with Yan Poyue. Later, Xiao Yunjie, who transferred over, also joined them, and the three of them began to undergo rigorous training together. From 7 years old to now 18 years old. For 11 years, he never relaxed. This also allowed him to possess the qualities of a soldier before entering the military and becoming a soldier. You. Xiao Yunjie shook his head helplessly, his arm raised and draped over his shoulder. Those children are in a different situation from us. They have never experienced any setbacks since childhood. So in terms of training, they definitely don't want to put in a lot of effort. As for you, you're just pushing yourself too hard. Indeed, Yan Poyue nodded in agreement. He thinks he has worked hard enough in training. But compared to Jiang Yi, it is still far behind. Take the incident of staying overnight in the cemetery as an example. He can stay in the cemetery for 2 nights, and Jiang Yi can stay there for a week. But he and Xiao Yunjie also understand why Jiang Yi is pushing them so hard. Jiang Yi hopes to one day stand at the height of his former father and personally kill the murderer who killed his parents. This can be said to be the biggest reason that has supported his journey. With an expressionless expression, Jiang Yi wiped the sweat off his face and took away the arm that Xiao Yunjie had draped over his shoulder. I'll practice a little longer, you guys go back to eat first. You. Seeing this, Xiao Yunjie sighed helplessly. Yan Poyue on the other side rolled his sleeves and walked directly to another wooden dummy and began to practice. Seeing that the two men started again, Xiao Yunjie scratched his hair. He was not in the mood to go home for dinner, but also came to the third wooden dummy. Bang! Bang! The sound of fists colliding with wooden stakes began to be continuous. Looking at the wooden dummy in front of him, Jiang Yi's eyes darkened. Not enough. My current self is not strong enough. Not yet strong enough to kill the enemy. At the very least, I have to join the Cheetah assault team like my father. Only by joining the Cheetah assault team can I have a chance to find the killer who killed my parents. Solve it with your own hands. Just as Jiang Yi's mood gradually became heavy, bind the appropriate host and successfully awaken the role template system. The system activation task is now released. System activation task. Please successfully join the armed police force within 2 days. As long as, before midnight tonight, there can be 3,000 flowers, plus 1 more. 200 evaluation votes, plus 1 change. 2 people give a reward, plus 1 watch. 20 book reviews, plus 1 update. All conditions can be accumulated and stacked. As long as the grades are good, the author will stay up late today to code. Qingming outing and happy reading. Charge 100 and get 500 VIP coupons. Immediate recharge, activity period. April 4th to April 6th. Chapter 2. Obtain Template Zhang Qilin. Seeking fresh flowers. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 2. Obtain Template Zhang Qilin. The sudden sound in his ear stopped Jiang Yi from punching. He looked at Yan Poyue and Xiao Yunjie, who were still training next to him in shock, and confirmed that it was not their prank. He communicated with the system in his heart. System, what does a role template mean? Answer the host. After the activation of this system, you will be given a role template. The host may have the opportunity to increase the progress of the template for some of the things they usually do. The progress of the template has increased, and the host will gain abilities related to this role. After the template progress reaches 100%, the host can obtain all the abilities of the character. Okay, I got it. Having a general understanding of his own system, although Jiang Yi did not show any emotions on his face, he still clenched his fists in excitement. As long as the progress is completed, the character's abilities can be obtained. If the system provides a powerful character, one's own strength will definitely advance by leaps and bounds. However, before that, you need to activate the system yourself. How can I join the armed police force within 2 days? Watching the countdown to the activation task that had already begun, Jiang Yi frowned slightly. At this moment, Meng Wanhua, the aunt of the neighbor's house in the courtyard, suddenly hurriedly walked over from a distance. Upon seeing the three of them, Meng Wanhua quickly stepped forward. You three, come back with me quickly. Aunt Meng, what's going on? Xiao Yunjie wiped his sweat and looked bewildered. Meng Wanhua hesitated to say more and waved at them again. Let's go back first. This. The three of them exchanged a glance and quickly followed suit. At the same time, Yan Shuangying's family. Looking at the comrades sitting in front of him, Yan Shuangying frowned slightly. Lao Yan, what are you still struggling with? The middle-aged man led by Wang Chao is still working hard to persuade. I also watched these three children grow up, and with their abilities, it's a pity not to go there. I know they were trained by me, of course I know them, Yan Shuangying said in a deep voice with a stern face. I can help Xiao Yu make decisions, but I can't interfere with Xiao Jiang and Yunjie. Whether they are willing to go or not, you have to ask them personally. This. Wang Chao glanced at the other two people beside him, and the three shook their heads and smiled bitterly. But Yan Shuangying's words are not wrong either. Yan Poyue is his son, he can make decisions. Jiang Yi is his adopted son, while Xiao Yunjie is just a friend of Jiang Yi and Yan Poyue. He really can't make decisions for these two children. Okay, I'll ask when they come back. Wang Chao sighed as he spoke. Jiang Yi and the others had just returned when they heard this sentence. Xiao Yunjie was quick-witted, and before the person arrived, he anxiously spoke up, what do you want to ask us? Seeing them back, Wang Chao quickly let them in. The three of them sat on a nearby sofa, and Wang Chao smiled and said, Today I came to ask if you are willing to sign up to join the army. Being a soldier. The three of them were momentarily stunned when they heard this. Jiang Yi didn't expect the opportunity to come so quickly. He was still worried in the front foot, but someone came looking for him in the back foot. However, the activation condition for the system is to join the armed police force. So even if he wants to join the military, he still has to join the People's Armed Police Force and become a member of the Armed Police Force. And the Cheetah assault team he wants to join is also under the jurisdiction of the Armed Police Force. After thinking for a moment, he took the initiative to say, What kind of soldier are you? Wang Chao saw a scene and laughed, The people living in the courtyard of our military district are all armed police officers and their families, so I recommend you to go, of course it's the Armed Police Force. Armed Police. Upon hearing this, Xiao Yunjie felt a bit conflicted. He also wants to join the military, but not the armed police. However, before he could speak up, Jiang Yi and Yan Poyue had already given an answer in unison. I'll go. Turning his head to look at them, Xiao Yunjie looked a bit dumbfounded. No, how did you two agree so happily? Upon hearing this, Jiang Yi glanced at him expressionlessly and then looked back at Wang Chao. I am willing to join the army. Yan Poyue nodded next to him and said, I'm willing too. Wang Chao was overjoyed to see them answering so happily. He is well aware of how talented Jiang Yi and the others are in this field. With their talent and strength, if they are willing to join the army and become armed police officers, they will definitely become one of the best in the future. Okay, then I'll help you report it when I go back. With a smile, he nodded at Jiang Yi and Yan Poyue, and then looked at Xiao Yunjie. Yunjie, what about you? Ah. Xiao Yunjie was taken aback for a moment, then looked at Jiang Yi and Yan Poyue with a bitter expression and nodded helplessly, I'll go too. Both good brothers are going, what can he do? Of course I have to go too. Seeing all three of them go, Wang Chao mouth couldn't even close. With a smile, he handed a form to Jiang Yi and the others, as if afraid that the three of them would regret it. He quickly said, "You fill out this form tonight, and I'll come and pick it up tomorrow. It's only a few days until the recruitment deadline, so don't delay." After speaking, before Jiang Yi and others could answer, Wang Chao had already left with the other two people. Jiang Yi looked at the table in his hand and heard the sound of the system again in his ear. Ding, activation task completed, system activation successful. Activate current character template. Zhang Qilin. Qingming outing and happy reading. Charge 100 and get 500 VIP coupons. Immediate recharge, activity period. April 4th to April 6th. Chapter 3. The purpose of being a soldier is to join the Cheetah assault. You are listening at Novel Full.audio. Chapter 3. The purpose of joining the army is to join the Cheetah assault team. Zhang Qilin. Jiang Yi was taken aback and quickly flashed through the information about Zhang Qilin and his abilities in his mind. If I could acquire these abilities myself. Thinking of this, his eyes darkened. At this moment, the sound of the system rang out again. Congratulations to the host for obtaining the system activation reward. Zhang Qilin's physical fitness strengthening physical fitness. Listening to the tip in his ear, Jiang Yi only felt that his body was getting hotter and hotter. Although the electric fan was blowing on the side, it was useless to blow it on oneself. As the body temperature increases, the body also begins to undergo changes. This change cannot be described. Jiang Yi is very certain that his physical fitness has become as strong as that of a special forces soldier. Whether it's strength, speed, reaction speed, or bouncing ability, the current self is completely different from the self a minute ago. And this is just the beginning. Thinking that he would have the opportunity to obtain abilities such as Kirin blood and Kirin tattoos in the future, Jiang Yi's whole body was boiling with blood. Egu, Egu. What are you staring at? Xiao Yunjie saw Jiang Yi staring at the table in his hand without blinking, and reached out to shake his hand in front of him. Upon hearing this, Jiang Yi shook his head and stood up. Seeing him speechless, Xiao Yunjie quickly followed him up. Lao Jiang, why are you going? Shower. Then I won't go. With an awkward smile, Xiao Yunjie sat down again. Seeing Poyue on the side already starting to fill out the form, he picked up a pen and followed suit. 3 days later, take the bus to the military district. Jiang Yi ignored the noisy voices around him and looked expressionless outside the window. He, Poyue, and Xiao Yunjie were recommended to enlist, so the review process was very concise. In the past few days before coming to the military region, he has been trying to increase the progress of the template. But there hasn't been much movement on the progress bar. After careful consideration, he judged that he wanted to increase the progress of the template, and estimated that he would have to wait until he arrived at the military district. After all, the conditions for activating the system at that time were to join the people's armed police force and become a soldier. Hey, look, it's a real gun. Sleeping on the trough is amazing. Watching the bus enter the military district, the new recruits next to it also became more active. It wasn't until the bus arrived at an open space that the driver stepped on the brake and stopped the bus. Immediately afterwards, a solemn voice came from under the car. Everyone has it, get off and queue up. Upon hearing these words, all the new recruits immediately stood up and got off with their respective luggage. Quickly glancing at the several officers with straight military uniforms under the car, Jiang Yi also walked behind Poyue and Xiao Yunjie and got off the car together. After getting off the car, the three of them walked together and stood at the forefront of the queue. Listening to the report from the squad leader Zhang Tianyang on the side, Jiang Yi's gaze shifted to the officer located in the middle. Perhaps one's sensitivity has also been strengthened due to the enhancement of physical fitness. From this officer, he instinctively felt a sense of danger. Indicating what? Just as Jiang Yi was staring at the officer, he suddenly spoke up. He looked at the new recruit in front of him with an angry expression on his face and angrily rebuked, are you instructing to litter food? After speaking, he bypassed Zhang Tianyang directly and walked towards the bus behind him with a cold face. Until a few minutes later, all the remaining food on the car was taken off. Staring coldly at the new recruits in front of him, the officer spoke angrily. My name is Li Xiang, the commander of the Mobile Tiger Special Service Company. This time, serving as the new recruits company commander. My name is easy to remember, it's okay if you can't remember it. 2 years ago, I just got a new nickname. If you're willing, you can pick it up. This nickname is the Pervert King. As soon as Li Xiang finished speaking of his nickname, a smile appeared on the faces of many new recruits. Only Jiang Yi remained expressionless, staring at Li Xiang who was still lecturing. Based on his feelings towards Li Xiang, he felt that what Li Xiang said was not necessarily a joke. Abnormal king, I just don't know how abnormal it can be. Just as Jiang Yi was thinking about what Li Xiang could do, Li Xiang suddenly took a bag of eggs. After explaining the origin of the eggs, he pointed to these wasted foods and his eyes became somewhat indifferent. Whoever lost these foods, just come over and take them back and give them to me to eat one by one. It's okay if you don't want to eat, get out of here now. Upon hearing this command, the new recruits couldn't help but let out a mournful cry. Looking at the food on the ground, many people's faces turned green. Especially the young man LV Xiaotian, who crushed the egg, almost cried when he heard that he was going to eat the egg he had crushed. However, upon hearing the threat of getting lost if they didn't want to eat, the new recruits felt no matter how uncomfortable it was, they had to grit their teeth and eat it. After all, who wants to be sent home on their first day of service? That would be too embarrassing. Except for Jiang Yi, Yan Poyue, and Xiao Yunjie, all the other recruits stepped forward and picked up the food they had thrown away, reluctantly stuffing it into their mouths one by one. Li Xiang's gaze swept over the three of them and he walked forward step by step. After asking the names of Jiang Yi and the others, he raised his eyebrows and suddenly asked, why join the army? Upon hearing this, Xiao Yunjie took the lead in speaking. Serve the country, dedicate youth, and make contributions to the prosperity of our motherland. Upon hearing these words, Li Xiang chuckled lightly in his heart. This set of rhetoric is really standard. To be honest. He looked back at Xiao Yunjie and spoke expressionlessly. With his eyebrows furrowed, Yan Poyue answered the question on behalf of Xiao Yunjie, become stronger. His gaze swept over Yan Poyue, and Li Xiang immediately turned to Jiang Yi. And you? Looking straight ahead, Jiang Yi clenched his fists slightly. Join the Cheetah assault team. Qingming outing and happy reading. Charge 100 and get 500 VIP coupons. Immediate recharge, activity period. April 4th to April 6th. Chapter 4. Brother is really tough, did he get on the motor? You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 4. Brother is really tough, did he get on the motor? As soon as these words were spoken, everyone looked at Jiang Yi one after another. Li Xiang's gaze towards Jiang Yi also became a bit deep. What is the Cheetah assault team? LV Xiaotian struggled to swallow the egg in his mouth and asked the people around him. A whisperer who had been informed in advance replied, the Cheetah assault team is a people's armed police assault team established to maintain social stability and combat illegal criminals that other people's armed police cannot solve. There are all ruthless people inside. They are all outstanding members of the armed police. Jiang Yi actually said he wants to join the Cheetah assault team, how dare he say it. We are all just new recruits, and the distance from the Cheetah assault team is not as simple as crossing a ditch. The new soldier couldn't help but smile as he spoke. Other new recruits shook their heads when they heard this. In their view, Jiang Yi's purpose in joining the army was really delusional. Especially when he said this from a new recruit's mouth, it seemed even more ridiculous. Having dreams is a good thing. But dreams are too distant, they just add obstacles to oneself. Why laugh? Li Xiang listened to the whispers of the new recruits next to him and swept over with a sharp glance. The new recruits trembled and immediately shut up. Looking back at Jiang Yi, he narrowed his eyes slightly. Want to join the Cheetah assault team? You also need to have that skill. After speaking, he turned around expressionless. Only after passing by Zhang Tianyang's side did he continue to speak. We can't just let the waste of food go. Give these new recruits a good lesson. Yes. Zhang Tianyang let out a loud shout and looked back at the new recruits in front of him. He glanced over Jiang Yi and quickly walked to the front of the team. Everyone has it, run and walk. Upon hearing this, the new recruits immediately adjusted their states and followed him towards the distant training ground. It wasn't until everyone arrived at the training ground that Zhang Tianyang spoke up again. From now on, everyone runs 10 laps around the training ground. 10 laps. Looking at the training ground in front of them, which is a distance of a full kilometer, many new recruits were completely stunned. Before coming, many of them had not run even 5,000 meters, let alone 10,000 meters. What? Don't want to run? Zhang Tianyang sneered and said mercilessly, if you can't finish 10 laps, don't even think about eating. Hurry up and run for me. Speaking, he kicked the new recruits but directly. Seeing the resistance ineffective, the new recruits could only charge onto the runway in frustration. Jiang Yi really wants to test where his physical fitness limits after strengthening. After a simple warm-up, he directly accelerated his speed. Wang Chao Lao Jiang, why are you in such a hurry? Xiao Yunjie roared at the sight and quickly followed suit. Yan Poyue had no intention of falling behind and immediately followed closely. The figures of the three began to gradually detach from the team. Led by Jiang Yi, we are constantly accelerating our pace. The guy who started the game just said he wanted to join Cheetah, right? Look at this person's physical fitness. The deputy class monitor standing next to Zhang Tianyang smiled and spoke up. Upon hearing this, Zhang Tianyang said coldly, what's the use of having good physical fitness? Is it so easy for cheetahs to join? It won't be long before he knows how naive his idea is. You're quite optimistic, why are you so stubborn? The deputy class monitor replied silently and continued to look at Jiang Yi, who was leading the way. After running a few laps, even Yan Poyue and Xiao Yunjie couldn't keep up with Jiang Yi's rhythm. Looking at Jiang Yi's back in front, Xiao Yunjie couldn't help but feel confused. Swallow, do you feel that Lao Jiang's physical fitness has suddenly improved a lot? I've been feeling this for the past 2 days, and today it's particularly noticeable. Yes. Yan Poyue frowned slightly. Prior to this, his strength was comparable to that of Jiang Yi. The two of them have almost the same physical fitness and speed in running. But today, he clearly felt that he couldn't keep up with Jiang Yi. A feeling of powerlessness arose as one gradually pulled apart, wanting to catch up but unable to do so. What's going on? Old Jiang secretly increased his training again. It shouldn't be. Even if you practice secretly, you won't be able to enhance it so quickly, right? Xiao Yunjie kept muttering. Yan Poyue's eyebrows furrowed again, accelerating his speed. Hey, what are you doing? As Yan Poyue tried to distance himself from him and pursue Jiang Yi, Xiao Yunjie suddenly felt helpless. Kohaha sighed bitterly, and he could only accelerate to catch up. As Yan Poyue and Xiao Yunjie accelerated, Jiang Yi also carefully felt the limits of his body. He knows his own physical condition the best. At the current level, he has not reached his best level, let alone his limits. Even if the speed continues to increase, it is no burden for him. And this is just a reward given by the system activation, and I have only obtained Zhang Qilin's physical fitness. If the template progress increases and other abilities are obtained just thinking about it, Jiang Yi felt a surge of excitement. Feeling the constant power within his body, he braved the strong wind and accelerated his speed once again. Are you crazy? The new recruits who fell far behind looked at Jiang Yi, who was trapped in his own circle, and couldn't help but be dumbfounded. They originally thought Yan Poyue and Xiao Yunjie were also very impressive. But compared to Jiang Yi, those awesome guys are nothing anymore. Crouching slot, brother is really tough. Can you hold on to this speed and complete 10 laps? I think so. Look at his condition, he feels like he's running without any pressure. Grass, after running 2 laps, I'm almost exhausted and turned into a dog. Why is this guy so capable of running? Did you get on the motor? No wonder he dares to say he wants to join the Cheetah assault team, I think it's a show. Damn it, what are you thinking? Do you think running fast can make you join the Cheetah? Indeed, joining Cheetah is not that easy. As Jiang Yi's figure grew farther and farther away, the new recruits sighed heavily. Not to mention whether Jiang Yi can join the Cheetah assault team. At least in terms of running circles, they have been beaten into grandsons. While Jiang Yi and others were running in the nearby office building, Li Xiangjing stood by the window, his gaze fixed on Jiang Yi. As long as, before midnight tonight, there can be 3,000 flowers, plus 1 more. 200 evaluation votes, plus 1 change. 2 people give a reward, plus 1 watch. 20 book reviews, plus 1 update. All conditions can be accumulated and stacked, as long as the grades are good, the author will stay up late today to code. Qingming outing and happy reading. Charge 100 and get 500 VIP coupons. Immediate recharge, activity period. April 4th to April 6th. New book set sale, seek point data. You are listening at novelfull.audio. As long as, before midnight tonight, there can be 3,000 flowers, plus 1 more. 200 evaluation votes, plus 1 change. 2 people give a reward, plus 1 watch. 20 book reviews, plus 1 update. All conditions can be accumulated and stacked, as long as the grades are good, the author will stay up late today to code. Qingming outing and happy reading. Charge 100 and get 500 VIP coupons. Immediate recharge, activity period. April 4th to April 6th. Chapter 5. Does he still have a chance? Seeking Flowers 4. You are listening at novelfull.audio. New Army Company instructor Chen Mintao saw Li Xiang staring out the window and walked over to take a glance. Upon discovering that he was looking at Jiang Yi and the others, Chen Mintao laughed. How about Lao Li, these 3 new recruits are not bad, are they? Upon hearing this, Li Xiang remained silent. After a moment, he said in a deep voice, what's the situation with the 3 of them? When Chen Mintao saw him interested, he took out the information of Jiang Yi and the others, handed it to him, and said, all 3 of them came from the courtyard of the military district. Xiao Yunjie's parents divorced, and his childhood was not easy for him. He was kicked like a football by his parents. Yan Poyue's father, Yan Shuangying, was an old soldier, and all 3 of them trained with Yan Shuangying's father. As for Jiang Yi. After hesitating for a moment, Chen Mintao continued, Jiang Yi's parents are also veterans, both members of the Cheetah assault team. When he was a few years old, he died in a mission. Since then, Jiang Yi has been adopted by Yan Shuangying. So is it for this reason that he wants to join Cheetah? Li Xiang asked in reverse. Chen Mintao smiled and shook his head, yes, this child has a heart attack. Do you think he has a chance? Staring at Jiang Yi's running figure, there was a moment of silence. Li Xiang snorted lightly and said coldly, with his current temperament, it's impossible. Upon hearing this, Chen Mintao was taken aback and said, why? Li Xiang turned around and left the window, why? Not to mention his strength, with his current temperament, do you think cheetahs will take him? Upon hearing his evaluation, Chen Mintao smiled bitterly. He looked at Jiang Yi, who was running alone at the front of the playground, and sighed lightly, he is really a rare and good seedling. I hope we can change his temperament here. Otherwise, with his abilities, it would be a pity. Upon hearing this, Li Xiang remained silent. Looking at Jiang Yi's document on the table, he furrowed his brows and fell into contemplation. Under the scorching sun and hot wind, the new recruits had already run dizzy and their brains were hot. I don't know how long they ran, but they finally finished the 10 laps ordered by Zhang Tianyang. Figures soaked in sweat collapsed weakly to the ground. Finally, it was the deputy squad leader Lu Yongjun who kicked them up step by step, and they barely got up from the ground, moving their legs that were almost unconscious. Seeing them stop, Jiang Yi also stopped along. But Yan Poyue had no intention of stopping at all. Xiao Yunjie saw Yan breaking through Yunnan. Stop, so he decided to run along. Seeing this, Zhang Tianyang, who had been standing on the side watching, frowned. He picked up his whistle and blew it, giving orders directly to Yan Poyue and Xiao Yunjie. You two, stop me. Upon hearing the command, the two slowed down and stopped their steps. The three of them turned to face Zhang Tianyang, and Yan Poyue was the first to speak. Class monitor, what can I do for you? The 10 laps have already ended, Zhang Tianyang frowned. You two should also go to the cafeteria with the others for dinner first. Upon hearing this, Yan Poyue refused without hesitation. Report to the class monitor, I am not hungry, I apply to continue. What are you applying for? Zhang Tianyang raised his eyebrows and his face turned a bit cold. As his body straightened, Yan Poyue answered without hesitation, I apply to continue. Staring coldly at Yan Poyue, Zhang Tianyang spoke in a deep voice, are you trying to disobey the order of my class leader? Upon hearing this, Yan Poyue retorted, report to the class monitor, I just want to challenge myself and make myself stronger. Ha! Challenge yourself. Become stronger. With a sneer, Zhang Tianyang nodded impatiently and said, okay. You want to run, right? Then I'll let you run enough. Pointing towards the gradually setting sun, he continued, have you seen that sun? Before it completely disappears, you keep running here and don't stop. Get lost. With a furious rebuke, Zhang Tianyang no longer cared about them and turned to look at Jiang Yi and others. Everyone has it, line up to eat. Upon hearing the word eat, the other recruits felt like they had beaten chicken blood, immediately reorganized their team, and left with Lu Yongjun. Yan Poyue and Xiao Yunjie don't want to eat, they really want to eat. After 10 laps, they were already so hungry that their chests pressed against their backs. As Jiang Yi watched as others were about to leave, he glanced at Yan Poyue and Xiao Yunjie, who were still running on the training ground. His footsteps paused and he remained in place. Zhang Tianyang is about to leave together. Seeing him stop, he squinted his eyes and said, what are you doing? Upon hearing this, Jiang Yi looked straight ahead and replied, report to class leader, we are waiting for Yan Poyue and Xiao Yunjie. In this situation, it is not appropriate for him to leave Yan Poyue and Xiao Yunjie here and go eat on his own. Zhang Tianyang laughed angrily when he heard his answer. Waiting for Yan Poyue and Xiao Yunjie. If I remember correctly, you grew up together, right? Yes. Okay. Angry, he nodded and Zhang Tianyang reached out to the training ground. Brotherhood is deep. Then let's run together. Yes. With a calm expression, Jiang Yi turned around in a standard posture and ran back towards the training ground. Looking at their figures, Zhang Tian was so angry that he laughed a few more times and turned away with a cold face. On the training ground, the figures of the three ran in circles against the sunset. Until the sun completely disappeared in the west, Jiang Yi slowly stopped in his tracks. Let's go, eat. I won't eat, you guys go first. Yan Poyue said, ready to continue running forward. With a frown, Jiang Yi grabbed his collar and spoke coldly. I said, eat. It's okay to practice more, but at the cost of harming the body, it's mindless. After speaking, he loosened Yan Poyue's collar and turned his head to look at Xiao Yunjie, who was so tired that he could even step on a sweat shoe print. Let's go. Taking 2 breaths of discomfort, Xiao Yunjie struggled to put his arm on Jiang Yi's shoulder and said, "Old Jiang, give me a hand, my legs are weak." Glancing at him, Jiang Yi propped up his already limp body without saying a word. Looking at the figures of the 2 of them, Yan Poyue thought for a moment about what Jiang Yi had just said, and also moved his steps to follow. Qingming outing and happy reading. Charge 100 and get 500 VIP coupons. Immediate recharge, activity period. April 4th to April 6th. Chapter 6. Unlimited Future. New book counting. You are listening at novelfull.audio. When Jiang Yi took Yan Poyue and Xiao Yunjie to the cafeteria, Zhang Tianyang and Lu Yongjun happened to come out from inside. Seeing the 2 of them, Jiang Yi and Yan Poyue stopped in their tracks. "Hello class monitor, hello deputy class monitor." "Class monitor? Where is there a class monitor?" Xiao Yunjie, who had not yet fully recovered from leaning on him, propped up his head. He stood up straight as he caught the gaze of Tianyang and Lu Yongjun. "Hello class monitor. Hello deputy class monitor." Glancing over Jiang Yi and the others, Zhang Tianyang turned around with a cold face. Lu Yongjun asked them to eat quickly and walked quickly to Zhang Tianyang's side. It wasn't until Jiang Yi and others entered the cafeteria that he couldn't hide his shock and said, "Look at their current state. Did they really run to sunset? These 3 boys' physical abilities are a bit too good." Especially Jiang Yi, whose face was not red or panting, looked like he had only undergone a simple warm-up. Listening to Lu Yongjun's undisguised praise of Jiang Yi and the others, the cold expression on Zhang Tianyang's face also disappeared. Based on his understanding of the new recruits, they must be honest and straightforward when they are under his nose. But once you get out of your sight, you can do anything. He originally thought that Jiang Yi and the others would slack off and rest while he was leaving. He is also prepared to turn a blind eye. Unexpectedly, these 3 kids actually persisted. This physical ability has even surpassed myself. Especially Jiang Yi. Thinking of Jiang Yi's recent state, Zhang Tianyang's heart was also filled with surprise. If Jiang Yi persists until the sun sets, then based on his performance just now, his physical fitness has far exceeded that of his class monitor. Maybe it's already comparable to those monsters in the special forces. Lao Jiang, these 3 boys' future is limitless. We need to focus on cultivating them. Lu Yongjun couldn't conceal his smile when he thought of having such an excellent new recruit under his command. Glancing at him, Zhang Tianyang shook his head in silence. Let's do our job well, whether or not to focus on training is also up to the platoon leader to decide. That's true, Lu Yongjun understood and immediately said, "Shall we report their performance today?" After thinking for a moment, Zhang Tianyang nodded and said, "It's okay." He naturally did not want to bury the talented talents of Jiang Yi, Yan Poyue, and Xiao Yunjie. While discussing with Zhang Tianyang and Lu Yongjun, Jiang Yi and his companions had just entered the cafeteria when they received attention from other recruits. "Hey, Jiang Yi and the others are here," someone whispered, and the new recruits who didn't notice also looked up and secretly looked at Jiang Yi and the others. These 3 big brothers won't really come here until now, will they? Judging from Xiao Yunjie's exhaustion, I guess he is. Sleeping trough, that's too big a cow batch. 3 ruthless people, have you persisted until now, at least running 30 laps? Mainly that Jiang Yi, he doesn't look tired at all. That big brother was already far ahead before, and he trapped us for countless laps. When we were exhausted into a dog, he didn't even take a breath. How did you practice it? You can run so well. Everyone stared at the figures of Jiang Yi and the others, unable to resist whispering. However, there were also some dissatisfied voices among them, thinking that they might have been lazy while running circles. After all, no one was watching at that time. Ignoring those voices, Jiang Yi finished his meal and walked straight to an empty seat. Poyue and Xiao Yunjie followed closely and sat down opposite him. As the person collapsed onto the chair, Xiao Yunjie let out a long sigh and looked at Jiang Yi with a gloomy expression. Lao Jiang, what's your situation? Why is your stamina so good today? He was about to ask this just now. Today's Jiang Yi is as physically strong as an iron fist. Poyue was also curious about this and looked up at Jiang Yi. Swallowing the rice in his mouth, Jiang Yi calmly glanced at them and said, "It's just normal practice." Even if Poyue and Xiao Yunjie grew up together, he could not say anything about the system. Upon hearing this answer, Xiao Yunjie sighed and shook his head. "Abnormal, I can't compare with you, Yanzi. If you work hard, you might catch up with Lao Jiang's pace." Upon hearing this, Poyue frowned slightly and remained silent. He also wants to work hard to catch up with Jiang Yi's pace. But judging from today's gap, it's difficult. Even if he doesn't want to admit it, he has to admit it. "Alright, let's eat." Putting aside this sentence, Jiang Yi remained silent. Xiao Yunjie scratched his head in frustration and could only lower his head to speed up the meal. Because there was no training at night, the three of them finished their meal and returned to the dormitory. After taking a shower, Xiao Yunjie lay down on the bed and fell asleep. Poyue said he wanted to go out and practice more, but in the blink of an eye, there was no one left. Seeing that the others in the dormitory had not returned yet, Jiang Yi also took advantage of this time to check his personal information in the system. Name: Jiang Yi. Age: 18 years old. Physical fitness level: 35/10 for ordinary adult males. Current character template: Zhang Qilin. Ability obtained: Zhang Qilin's physical fitness, 50%. Zhang Qilin's character template progress: 5%. Watching the progress of the 5% template, Jiang Yi breathed a sigh of relief. It seems that I guessed correctly. As long as you enter the armed police force, your template progress will increase. Just don't know how much to increase in order to obtain Zhang Qilin's next ability. Thinking of this, Jiang Yi shouted out the system directly. After understanding Jiang Yi's question, the system promptly responded. Answer the host: once the template progress reaches 10%, the host will receive Zhang Qilin's second ability. Qingming outing and happy reading. Charge 100 and get 500 VIP coupons. Immediate recharge, activity period. April 4th to April 6th. Chapter 7. Unable to be suffocated by tofu chunks. You are listening at Novel Full.audio. 10%. Upon hearing the system's response, Jiang Yi looked back at his 5% progress. Based on the current progress, I can quickly make Zhang Qilin's template progress reach 10%. I just don't know which skill Zhang Qilin will possess next. After a slight movement of his tired body, Jiang Yi also lay in bed and closed his eyes. Until the whistle sounded the next day, he immediately opened his eyes, quickly put on his clothes, and got up. Poyue and Xiao Yunjie are also accustomed to getting up early. Although their fatigue had not completely subsided, they still climbed up together. But for other new recruits in the dormitory, getting up is not that easy. Especially after running 10 laps on the first day, many of them were so sore that they couldn't sleep that night, and only managed to squint for a while in the early morning. Getting them up now is even more difficult than reaching the sky. However, Zhang Tianyang never gave them a chance to sleep longer. 2 minutes after the whistle ended, Zhang Tianyang directly opened their dormitory door and walked in. Glancing at the three of Jiang Yi, who were already dressed and ready to go wash up, he felt satisfied in his heart. Then, upon seeing the other recruits lying in bed, this satisfaction immediately turned into anger. What time is it and still sleeping? I want to run 10 laps again, right? I'll give you 2 seconds. If anyone is still lying in bed, come and stand naked on the training ground for a day. Upon hearing these words, the new recruits, who had already been scared out of sleep, immediately got up from the bed. Before Zhang Tianyang could count to 2, all the new recruits were already naked and standing straight by the window. Just kidding. They would rather be exposed by the class monitor at this moment than be surrounded by a group of people on the training ground. Glancing at them again, Zhang Tianyang finally left the dormitory and walked towards the next one. Lu Yongjun smiled and glanced at them, then took 2 steps forward and walked to the middle of the dormitory. Next, I will arrange the training content for you this morning. Upon hearing this, the newly recruited soldiers who were still naked couldn't help but let out mournful cries. Liu Xiaotian covered his crotch and said with a broken face, "Report to the deputy squad leader, we were all exhausted yesterday. We haven't had breakfast yet, so we arranged the training content so early." Taking a glance at him, Lu Yongjun's eyes widened and he said, "I haven't talked about the training content yet, so you started complaining. Just one more sentence, immediately go to the training ground and have a penalty stand for me. Deputy class monitor, will wearing clothes penalize standing? What do you think?" Seeing the sneer on Lu Yongjun's face, LV Xiaotian wisely closed his mouth. After confirming that the other recruits had no complaints, Lu Yongjun cleared his throat before continuing, "The training content this morning is very simple. Just 2 words, internal affairs. In a moment, I will teach you how to organize your internal affairs. Before lunch, class monitor Zhang and I will come to inspect. I hope you won't disappoint us then. If anyone can't even do internal affairs well, get out of here as soon as possible." Upon learning that the training was focused on internal affairs, everyone breathed a sigh of relief. As long as it's not a penalty for running circles, let them do whatever they want. But soon, these new recruits stopped thinking so. They also want to understand why the class monitor and deputy class monitor gave them one morning to practice. Everything else is easy to say. The fact that the quilt can be folded into tofu chunks is a disaster. The fastest progress among everyone is Jiang Yi. He started training himself in this area long ago in order to become a soldier. So for him, breaking the quilt into tofu chunks was just a small matter. As for the slowest progress, it was none other than his hair, Yan Poyue and Xiao Yunjie. Seeing everyone working hard until the end, Yan Poyue and Xiao Yunjie didn't fold their blankets properly in the entire dormitory, and Jiang Yi was speechless. Yan Poyue and Xiao Yunjie's gloomy faces turned even darker. The 2 of them looked at the soft blanket in front of them, and then glanced at the standard tofu chunks in front of Jiang Yi, feeling very uncomfortable. "Lao Jiang, help me." Xiao Yunjie had thick skin and directly sought help from Jiang Yi. Looking at his pitiful expression, Jiang Yi shook his head speechlessly, opened his blanket, and folded it step by step again. But until his blanket turned back into tofu chunks, Xiao Yunjie didn't learn any of his skills. After a moment of silence, Xiao Yunjie sighed with resignation, "I understand. I just don't have this talent. Lao Jiang, why don't you help me stack it? I'll help you with your water fetching work in the future. Get lost." With a blank expression of disgust, Jiang Yi turned around and walked towards the outside of the dormitory, preparing to go for breakfast. Upon seeing this, Yan Poyue and Xiao Yunjie also followed suit. "Lao Jiang, you should consider it again. Lao Jiang, all these years of brotherhood. Get lost. Lao Jiang." Ignoring Xiao Yunjie's plea, Jiang Yi calmly went to the cafeteria and finished breakfast. In his view, internal affairs organization is an important part of cultivating a rigorous attitude and level of attention for military personnel. It's impossible for him to help Yan Poyue and Xiao Yunjie take advantage of such an important matter. Until the 3 of them walked out of the cafeteria, Xiao Yunjie finally gave up and began to find another way. "I don't believe it anymore, I can be suffocated by a piece of tofu. Swallow, let's think of another way. It's not enough to rely on our own abilities. We can think of other ways. You can't be driven away because you can't fold the blanket properly, can you? He muttered to himself and then looked at Jiang Yi. Lao Jiang, can you help us think of a solution and see if there is any way? Upon hearing this, Jiang Yi was about to say, practice hard, when suddenly a voice full of vitality came from beside him. What are these potatoes today? Why are they so small? Following the sound, he immediately saw the middle-aged man holding a potato with a disdainful expression on his face. The man has a burly figure and is wearing an apron, making him look like a cook. Despite being from the cooking class, he felt a bit of pressure from this man. That is a momentum from the strong. How could such a person stay in the kitchen? With a frown on his eyebrows, Jiang Yi felt a bit more puzzled in his heart. Yan Poyue and Xiao Yunjie on the side thought he was giving them a trick, and they followed his gaze. However, their gaze did not fall on the cook wearing an apron, but on the two iron doors behind the cook. At the moment they saw the iron gate, their eyes lit up at the same time. The new book has just been released and requires data support. I would like to ask for the flower evaluation tickets in the hands of the big shots. Thank you very much. Qingming outing and happy reading. Charge 100 and get 500 VIP coupons. Immediate recharge, activity period. April 4th to April 6th. Chapter 8. Lao Jiang, you are still clever. New book seeking. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Lao Jiang, you're still clever. How could I not have thought of such a good solution? Xiao Yunjie chuckled and happily tapped Jiang Yi's shoulder. Upon hearing this, Jiang Yi frowned slightly. Clever. What nonsense is Xiao Yunjie talking about? He shook his head in silence and turned to leave. As soon as he took a step out, he was grabbed by Xiao Yunjie. Hey Lao Jiang, don't rush to leave yet. That thing is so heavy. Can you help us move it together? Move. Listening to Xiao Yunjie's confused speech, Jiang Yi's gaze turned towards Yan Poyue. At this moment, Yan Poyue had already walked to the two iron doors behind the cafeteria. Seeing no one paying attention here, he immediately moved out one of the iron doors. Xiao Yunjie also cautiously looked around and immediately pulled Jiang Yi forward. Before Jiang Yi could ask them what they were up to, Xiao Yunjie had already turned one side of the iron gate towards him. Lao Jiang, help me lift it quickly. Upon hearing this, although Jiang Yi didn't know why they were moving the iron gate, he still helped them lift it up easily. Yan Poyue then moved out another iron door. The three of them carried two iron doors and walked all the way to the downstairs of the new recruits' dormitory. Oh, it's quite heavy. The iron gate was lowered, and Xiao Yunjie wiped the sweat off his head and continued contentedly, but this weight must be enough. Indeed, that's enough. Yan Poyue on the side also stared at iron gate and nodded in agreement. Seeing them staring so happily at the two iron doors, Jiang Yi couldn't help but be speechless. The time for the internal affairs inspection is approaching. It's okay if these two people are not in a hurry. They are still staring at the two iron doors so happily, I don't know what they think. I'll go back to the dormitory first. The class monitor will come to inspect soon. You two should hurry up too. Seeing them still staring at the iron gate for discussion, Jiang Yi casually reminded them. Upon hearing this, Xiao Yunjie grinned his big white teeth and gave him a thumbs up. Don't worry, Lao Jiang, you've already helped us to this extent. If we still can't handle it well, it will be too embarrassing for you. Seeing him start talking nonsense again, Jiang Yi shook his head and turned to walk towards the dormitory building. For the rest of the time, he continued to do some simple training in the dormitory. As for Yan Poyue and Xiao Yunjie, except for returning midway to get a blanket, they have never returned to the dormitory, and they don't know what they are up to. Until the deadline was approaching, the two of them hugged the perfectly transformed quilt and returned to the dormitory with a graceful expression. Seeing them go out and fold the blankets, even Jiang Yi couldn't react. What is the situation? Looking at the two neatly arranged blankets on the bed, Jiang Yi felt a bad feeling in his heart. Upon hearing this, Xiao Yunjie immediately gave a brilliant smile. Is that worth mentioning? We have succeeded. How about you being clever, Lao Jiang? Your method is also too clever. I processed it with swallow again, and the effect is impressive. Seeing him proudly pointing at two perfect tofu pieces, Jiang Yi's sword eyebrows gradually furrowed. My own method. Didn't I just teach them how to fold the quilt once, and did I teach them any other methods besides that? No. What is Xiao Yunjie talking about here? They won't just be unable to fold the sheets properly in their dormitories, but when they move out to fold them, they suddenly become enlightened, right? With my own understanding of them, it is absolutely impossible. What exactly was the method used for these two goods? Just as Jiang Yi was about to ask in detail, LV Xiaotian suddenly rushed into the dormitory. After him, several other people in the dormitory also rushed in. Hurry up, hurry up. The class monitor is here. Urgently reminding Jiang Yi and others, LV Xiaotian was a bit dumbfounded when he saw the tofu chunks on Yan Poyue and Xiao Yunjie's beds. What is the situation with the sleeping trough? Your blankets are still a pile of feces in the morning, but they turn into tofu chunks when they click at noon. Can it be that Brother Jiang took action? LV Xiaotian said and looked at Jiang Yi. Upon hearing this, Jiang Yi shook his head expressionlessly and said, "It's nothing to do with me." Ah. Seeing Jiang Yi deny it, LV Xiaotian glanced at Yan Poyue and Xiao Yunjie's blankets again and couldn't help but laugh and cry, saying, "Where did those two of you steal the blankets from?" The old soldier's blanket. Stealing your sister. With a slap on the brim of his hat, Xiao Yunjie coldly said, "This is our blanket." This is impossible. LV Xiaotian still had an incredulous expression on his face. Yan Poyue chuckled lightly and asked with a hint of pride, "LV Xiaotian, it's not ours. So, let's see who's missing the blanket, or whose blanket suddenly turned into a pile of shit. Tell me whose blanket it belongs to." All new recruits, gather in the hallway. Just then, a whistle suddenly came from inside the corridor. Upon hearing the loud voice, everyone dared not hesitate and immediately ran towards the outside of the dormitory. In the hallway, Zhang Tianyang and Lu Yongjun kept checking the dormitories one by one. Until they finished inspecting the interior of Jiang Yi and others' dormitory, the two of them walked out of the dormitory without leaving immediately. Instead, they walked slowly with a cold face to Jiang Yi, Yan Poyue, and Xiao Yunjie. His gaze swept over the three faces, and he clearly suppressed his anger and spoke coldly. "Tell me, how did you three fold your blankets?" Qingming outing and happy reading. Charge 100 and get 500 VIP coupons. Immediate recharge, activity period. April 4th to April 6th. Chapter 9, There's a Big Misunderstanding. New Book Seeking Flower Review. You are listening at novelfull.audio. When Zhang Tianyang asked these words, the other recruits immediately shifted their gaze to Jiang Yi and the others. With a candid gaze straight ahead, Jiang Yi calmly said, "Report to the class monitor, fold it with your hands." Hand folded. Zhang Tianyang sneered, looking at them with a hint of hatred towards iron and steel. He has great confidence in Jiang Yi and the others. Especially Jiang Yi. In his opinion, he will definitely grow into a first-class excellent soldier in the future. But today's incident really disappointed him. Zhang Tianyang became increasingly angry as he thought about it, and couldn't help but scold him again. Fold your fart with your hands. Do you dare to say that you stacked it with your hands? Upon hearing this, Jiang Yi furrowed his brows. Liu Xiaotian swallowed his saliva and opened his mouth carefully. Report to the class monitor, I can testify to Jiang Yi that he stacked it with his hands. Oh. Can you testify? To ask a rhetorical question, Zhang Tianyang angrily smiled and said, then tell me what happened to those two deformed iron doors. What happened to the fake message received by the car company over there? You three are amazing. I have been a soldier for so many years, and I have walked step by step until now. I have never seen such a shameful thing in my life, let alone thought that such a thing would happen to the soldiers I lead. At the end of the scolding, he was so angry that he gasped for breath. Upon hearing the keywords, Iron Gate and Automobile Company, Jiang Yi probably thought of something, wishing to give Poyue and Xiao Yunjie a big push. He said, these two goods carried the quilt and ran outside, but when they returned, the quilt turned into tofu chunks. Emotions use such foolish methods, even claiming that the methods are self-initiated. Give me a thumbs up. When did I let them do this immoral thing? Poyue and Xiao Yunjie on the side felt guilty when they saw that they had implicated Jiang Yi. With a solemn expression, Xiao Yunjie spoke first. Report to class monitor, this matter is my idea, it has nothing to do with Jiang Yi and Poyue. As soon as he finished speaking, Poyue immediately spoke. Report to the class monitor, this matter is my concern and has nothing to do with the two of them. Seeing that both of them were eager to take responsibility for themselves and didn't want the other two to be punished, Jiang Yi couldn't help but feel helpless. Just as he was about to say something, Zhang Tianyang smiled coldly again. Okay, why don't you put on a show of deep brotherhood for me again? What do you think this is? Ah. This is the Tiger Special Service Company. Your current identity is a soldier. Do you think you're just playing house? Just blame yourself for doing something wrong. How could you do that? Do you know how serious it is to randomly damage public goods within the military district? Do you know how serious it is to casually pass on fake messages to other companies? At the end, Zhang Tianyang had already started shouting sentence by sentence. The other new recruits were frightened and their faces turned pale, huddled on the side, afraid to breathe. Lu Yongjun, who was still standing beside him, sighed and pretended to have a white face. Looking at Jiang Yi and the others, he sighed and said, you guys have really done something really stupid this time. You should be grateful that the car company and the kitchen staff did not intend to blame you. Otherwise, these two things are enough to make you go. Lao Jiang, why don't you say a few words less? Speak less. If I say too much, they won't listen. Does it work if I say less? Zhang Tianyang asked with a black face and looked at Jiang Yi and the others again, angrily saying, find those two iron doors for me and immediately send them back to the cafeteria. Wherever you got it, you can send it back to me. Class monitor, that iron gate is quite heavy. Xiao Yunjie spoke with a bitter face. Upon hearing this, Zhang Tianyang's face turned even darker. Sinking. When you moved out, you didn't find it too heavy. Now you know it's sinking. I think you want to run around the training ground to the sunset like you did yesterday, right? Avoiding his gaze, Xiao Yunjie immediately shut up. Jiang Yi took a light breath, turned around first, and walked towards the outside of the dormitory building. Upon seeing this, Poyue and Xiao Yunjie quickly followed suit. Seeing them leave honestly, Zhang Tianyang finally sorted out the remaining recruits and led them to the training ground. Until he got out of Zhang Tianyang's sight, Poyue quickly walked over to Jiang Yi and apologized. Lao Jiang, I'm sorry to have implicated you. Xiao Yunjie immediately caught up and looked at Jiang Yi's embarrassed face, saying, Old Jiang, I'm sorry. We'll move the iron door in a while, you rest. Upon hearing this, Jiang Yi stopped in his tracks. I won't mention this beforehand. He looked at Poyue and Xiao Yunjie and continued, why do you two think of using an iron door to press the quilt? Are you still looking for help from the car company? When did I give you such a prompt? Seeing him ask such a question, Poyue and Xiao Yunjie were actually confused. Pointing in the direction of the cafeteria, Xiao Yunjie coughed lightly and said, "When I asked if you had any good ideas, didn't you look at the iron door behind the cafeteria? We thought you were asking us to use iron doors. Am I looking at the iron gate?" Jiang Yi was speechless upon hearing this. I was looking at the cooking soldiers present at the time, and I had never seen the iron gate before. Ah! Poyue and Xiao Yunjie were taken aback and dumbfounded again. Are you looking at cooks, not iron gates? That misunderstanding is really big. As Jiang Yi walked over and lifted the iron gate, Poyue and Xiao Yunjie immediately rushed forward. Let Jiang Yi be punished with them, they are already guilty enough. After all, Jiang Yi was not involved in anything other than helping them lift the iron gate. At this moment it was known that Jiang Yi was watching the cooks at the time, not reminding them to use iron doors to press the quilt, and they were even more ashamed. Let Jiang Yi lift the iron gate with them again, what's wrong with them? Poyue and Xiao Yunjie insisted, and Jiang Yi also let go. On the way back to lift the iron gate, Poyue and Xiao Yunjie carried the iron gate one after another, and he followed beside them. But 2 people lifting it is not as easy as 3 people lifting it. As he was about to walk to the cafeteria, Xiao Yunjie couldn't hold on anymore and had to put down the iron door first. Shaking his arm, he had a bitter expression on his face. If I had known it would be like this now, I wouldn't have stolen these 2 iron gates back then. Don't complain, hurry up, Poyue gasped for breath from exhaustion. Seeing this, Jiang Yi stepped forward and prepared to help them lift it. As soon as he placed his hand on the iron door, Xiao Yunjie suddenly got excited and leaned towards him. Hey, Lao Jiang, have you seen that female soldier? She's not bad looking. Qingming outing and happy reading. Charge 100 and get 500 VIP coupons. Immediate recharge, activity period. April 4th to April 6th.